Hello, everybody, and welcome to another On the Workbench episode. This one's number 37. We're going to try, something that's not super new, but something that's going to be new, and that's right here. We're going to use some more of those liquid pigments. You saw me try these, especially on the terrain. Been waiting to try that's the Verdigris there. We've got a couple of the other dust and rust, so this turquoise oxide. I thought these could be fun. Now we're also going to take our metallic medium here. So use the Vallejo stuff all the time. Going to try this again. That's the Monument Slow Fuse Creature Caster ProAcryl Paint of 1,000 Names. But we're also going to combine it with especially things like the transparent. I almost call them clears because, well, Reaper clears basically kind of what I'm holding here in my left hand. We're going to mix that with stuff like this in my right hand. We're going to see if we can make a bronze verdigris effect on this. You recognize this figure? Yeah, sorry, you've been seeing it a million times, but it was actually part of the Adepticon regime. We were going to be doing all kinds of different effects on these, and this was one of them, working A with metallics, B with some verdigris type effects. And this one, it's also going to be done like a statue. That's going to be done as gold, so we'll see how that works. Now we'll just have to paint the bases in a regular way. I'll just throw some cursory glazes on those. We'll see what we do with that. But in any case, the big thing is to get our two different metal effects here. Now you see that picture off on the left. There was another reference that I had. It was almost entirely the verdigris effect, and while that's actually in some ways more accurate, the other one, that's kind of what you expect to see. So we're going to try and replicate on this one, what you got right over there. And it should be interesting because we got plenty of nooks and crannies to work with here. But like I said, I thought it would be an interesting test. We've got another, see, we've got a couple of these light green, dark green. I have no idea what these are going to do. I have not used these yet. Haven't used these yet either. We've used all the rust ones and the dust and everything else for either for vehicles or for other weathering effects. Haven't tried these yet, and I've kind of been saving it just for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all this stuff out on the palette here. And we're going to start off first with the big one here. And we're going to do some initial glazes, shaded base coat, such as it is with metal on this monster right here. And we'll be right back with that. Let's get started with those initial base coats. Now we have transparent black over here, brown, red, orange, yellow. Have the blue black here and the golden yellow. Those are the regular opaque colors sitting over there. Let's just hit the base real quick for right now. And as always, we're just gonna thin this with water. You notice I don't have the weathering paints out there yet because, well, that will happen. What we're gonna do is in this segment here, we'll do all the initial glazes and just the starting work on this, and then we're gonna move over to the one that's supposed to be gold, and then we'll go back into this one here with more of the middle tones to make it more of our metal, then go back to the gold, and then the last couple of segments, well, the last segment will be the verdigris effect on this, because the gold, I mean, it's gold. We're not going to tarnish that. And if you're wondering, well, why this combination of colors or whatever, is I just take a little bit of the blue black and throw that in there. Well, that's what was requested. All of these, like the Jade one, all of these, again, were part of a Adepticon class. I'll just pop that right there, and I'm going to do I'm just taking some of that away. The brush like this. It's just kind of mixing together there by itself. We'll play with that later on. Now, as we look over at our bronze statue there, what we got to do is we got to slip a little bit of red into this here. Again, all you need with this is just some water. So remember, we're looking at the shadows. I'm going to take a touch of that blue in there. So we're basically making ourselves a little bit of a A little bit of a glaze here. And you say, well, what happened to all the metal stuff? Well, now that we're going strictly with the metal medium, unlike, and I don't know if you guys saw the last live session, we can go dark to light with that. That is the one thing I learned. We learned with the Turbo Dorks. Well, the Turbo Dork paints. Maybe we'll be a little more precise with what we're talking about there. I don't want to cast dispersions on a whole group of paint. I don't know what that would be, but those, let's say we were working from this point, we would just sort of glaze those metals over the top of this. In fact, I might even start with a lighter primer color than this if this were the Turbo Dorks. That's going to be for a separate video. Definitely going to be for another video. Now, what I will say is that you're going to notice a trend for this month's video is just a whole bunch of metallic stuff. Again, what can I say? It's sort of a holdover from Adepticon. You would have seen this later, more gradually, kind of interspersed maybe. But this is just going to be heavy metal month right here because of the next Dark Sword one that I just did. That also involves metallic paints. So, like I said, I try to normally have as much variety as I can, videos within the same month. Now, here, I just kind of switched away from all the reddishness and let a little bit of that bluish gray show up in there. So, again, I wish I could have done some oils in it. Well, there's nothing to say I can't do metallic oils because the MIG Ammo oil brushers, unlike, say, the Winsor Newton oil paints, those metallic oils are horrible. I mean, they are just, it's almost like sparkly paint or something. It's awful. But the MIG Ammo metallics, those are much more like the metal medium here. So yes, we can still do TMM in oils, believe it or not. And that's I'm not really thinking to hit you with that this month. But yeah, it's just a nice little set of glazes. I'm not even going to take the what the heck. I'm just gonna do my thing with the sponges here. I was tempted to just kind of leave it like that, sort of like it. Sort of like that. You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna let that dry, and just for the heck of it here, while I got this going, I'm just gonna throw some stuff on this base here. Just get this out of the way too. Just one less thing we got to worry about here. One last thing. I just absentmindedly took some of my bronze color and threw it into the base color over here. I mean, what the heck? Why not? Not going to hurt anybody. A little more of this, and boom, there's that base taken care of. Just trying to, as always, kill off whatever primer, just exposed primer. And we were sort of, in some ways, re-exposing the primer a little bit doing this, but see? Make that a little bit darker, gives us a better context. Now here, oh, what the heck. While we wait for our initial glazes on the figure itself to dry, I'm going to play around here. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to grab one of these guys and just take away a little bit of that. Got my, boy, I almost called that bubonic brown. I don't think that's what it, no, is it vermin brown? There's an old GW color that was kind of fun. And we'll just wipe that away actually with some paint. We'll do it again over here. We'll get this skull right here. That's one of the, actually that's from the GW skull set. really used a bunch of those. I'm making another box of them. What's interesting is that you've got a bunch of obviously regular human type skulls, but you've got some larger ones. You also have, I think you got some Tyranid skulls on there, some sort of chaos demon type skulls. I really do like the green stuff world, the skulls, because they have some neat orc skulls. Oh no, actually I think that the GW one has orc skulls too. But I really do like the green stuff world, the giant skulls. I think I used a lot of those on the free folk bases for the Song of Ice and Fire stuff. Okay, so no more. Let's see any more. Yeah, no more skull. I thought maybe there was one more skull under, but there's not. Alright, you can see I'm just throwing a little touch of some gray in there. That's that bluish gray. Nothing terribly special. And I don't care that stuff's just kind of leaching out. It doesn't matter to me. There's probably going to be a big old pond of verdigris right there. So it's not even registering as something to be concerned about for me. Now, what I will do while we're waiting here also. So we got, look at this. We have some of our bluish gray, right? We just mixed it with our, yeah, look at that. See how that covers over. Now, if that was the Turbo Dork stuff, I'm thinking it's not going to quite cover that. Now, what we're going to do is go right here. Oh, yeah. I got to tell you, it's been, ever since I first sort of discovered this method, this has been my favorite. If you're just saying, okay, what metallics or ways of doing metallics do you like best? Far and away, it's not even close, is definitely mixing the metal medium with regular paint. Now, here, I haven't tried this with the transparent. Now, this might be more like the Turbo Dorks. Let's see. I'm going to set this up where you can see it. Wow, look at that. Holy smokes. And here I'm thinking it's going to be more like the Turbo Dorks, where it's got, wow, okay, so good to know. Now, I realize it's going to maybe just sort of be more reflecting for you. That really covers. I'm impressed. So that means that these on that other figure here, I'm gonna get some nice bright golds out of that. I love the metal medium. It's been ever since I first tried it. I said, wow, this is just, I love this. So now what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be mixing some of that into this bronze color. That is why we did all this first. But you can see as it seeps down in there, so there's a little bit of bluish gray there. See that? Gets a little bit more reddish in some places, a little less in others. I'm going to just, boom, do that. But it'll just help it dry a little faster, if anything else. So this is a little bit different of a, just sort of doing a darkening down that gold. So I'm gonna put a little more of the metal medium in there. If you start to see, if it gets a little dull, right? Well, you're cranking a little more metal medium. It will get lighter because that's sort of what happens when you use the metal medium. But wow, see, look at that. Yeah, you can see it. There is just something about not having to fuss over finding just the right color of metallic paint. I think one of the first videos I ever did with this stuff, I basically just threw out the postulation. If that's grammatically correct, I'm gonna say it is. What if you could just take any color on your palette or in your paint collection, whatever color paint you have? What if that was to become a metallic paint? I mean, faded ultramarine blue, right? What if faded ultramarine blue could be made into a metallic paint? It would be the most powerful metallic paint ever. So I really enjoy it, and it's a way to make your paint darker. Let's see if we can't. Now, it may not show up as readily on camera, but yeah, I'm getting a Still get my highlights there from just that's the metal medium alone. Let's see how light we can make. Wow, so that can be very much brighter too. Yeah. Now, I could even get some other blue out here as well, but I'm just gonna see what I can do with that blue-gray, and we're mixing that with our metal medium. I don't want that to be super bright. And we're going to do our sword hilt here real quick. Let's make that a touch lighter. Ooh, I got to remember not to hit the metallics there. All right, let's just get that. Yeah, there we go. Let's do a little bit of... I'm so used to already thinking of that as my lighter color there. I almost reached into that. What the heck? We'll do a little bit of marble-ish effect right there. Why not? Like I said, not worried about the pool over there. Don't really care. Can deal with that another time. And it makes sense that Verdigris, right, is going to collect in that area because this is being stained by water, and that's just going to leach down. Just like if you have metal sitting on concrete or whatever, or even rebar, you've seen that. When it's exposed, the concrete around it also becomes stained. Now, I won't break out a lighter regular color just yet. Well, we're going to see if we can't stick with this kind of golden brown-ish yellow color here as our light. Let's see what we can do with this first before we can always get the lighter colors out. Some of the bright ivory, something like that. Yeah, that's set right there. We're gonna go over this one, do that skull. But that's the turbo dorks were fun, but I think it's either going to be like an airbrush type thing or more glazing. And now those could also be interesting for some terrain. But to me, the metal medium is... We all want to have exercise as maximum control over the paints and everything else as we work on this stuff. To me, the metallic medium or the metal medium, I think it's called a couple different things, and not even everybody calls it metal medium or metallic medium. It is a different thing. I think the the Green Stuff World metal medium is basically Arctic White, and it does a very similar thing to the other metal mediums out there. And if you remember, we used that on the Necron series. I'm going to get just a little bit of... See what we're doing here. Using kind of the side of the brush, and look at that, the paint's just sort of mixing there, doing its own thing, not a big deal. Gonna be a nice little foil to the golds on the figure itself. So let's move into here. Let's go into our metals on this, and I will start with a little less of the metal medium. Now, I want to I'm going to throw a little bit of orange in there as I look at... Yeah, that's a touch of orange. I'm going to darken this, throw some black in here. So I just made my own, basically, kind of a bronze metal color. And it is darker. You may not even see much difference, except see how that's more sparkly now. There we go. So we'll just we'll keep going with this, and Now the thing is, you look at that statue bust over there, I guess we'll call that. There's still a decent amount of shading on there. So like I said, we will go back into this and do more shading. Right now, the idea is I just want to turn everything here into metal. And you can see that even some of my initial glaze is mixing in with the putting over the top. That is fine, not a big deal. Again, all we're interested in doing is just making this more of a metal color. It's not about lightening it so much. And you say, well, why didn't you just do a base coat of it? Well, the idea was to try and get some shifts in the color. Like over here, there's a little bit of grayish blue. And my hope is the plant is to have some of that shows through, at least a little bit of it. At least a little bit of that. So that to me, this is a really fun, very effective bronze color here. Now, of course, Creature Caster makes metal paints. We know Green Stuff World, they got their metal paints too. And if you want to go ahead and use those, that is fine. For me, though, there's just something you just can't replace this idea of having every color be a metal if you want it to be. I'm really fascinated by it. Ever since I first tried it, I said, you know what, that's kind of neat. That's very powerful to be able to do that. Yeah, look at that. Now I get some of the initial glazes still are wet, but I'm even going to start to lighten this up a bit. I'm going to move down over here. We're going to take some of that with us. But as you can see, it gets even a bit more towards the orange. And this is the part where you don't necessarily get from your other metallic paint, unless you start mixing them together. So this is more of it's a lighter copper here. It's got a little more orange in it. You could get yourself a whole bunch of extra jars of metallic paint. That's nothing stopping you from doing that. But what if you could just take your regular colors that you already have, and with just one jar of metallic paints, all of a sudden, okay, let's say you've got, let's just take the Reaper set by. There's something like 400 and whatever Reaper colors. I think that's even without the metallic paints in there. That's probably just regular Reaper paints. Might be 400 of them at least. At least by now there are. And with just one metal medium color, or jar of metal medium, all of those 400 paints, they become metallics. I mean, to me, that's a whole lot of yeah. That's a whole lot of, all right, I'm up for that. Or you could buy 15, 20 jars of metallic paints and still not have the range of 400 and some odd colors. And those don't necessarily, you can't lighten those the way you can lighten this. How do you lighten it? You just toss in some more of that metal medium. That's all it takes. So it's a force multiplier. You are magnifying the amount of colors that you can make exponentially. It just keeps rising and rising because let's say you want to have some kind of a bright metallic teal. Well, you find yourself some kind of, like, say, jade or whatever from the Creature Caster line. You mix some of your metal medium into that. Now you got yourself a nice bright metallic turquoise. Let's say you take some just some kind of off-white, you mix it in there. All of a sudden now you have a lighter jade metallic turquoise than you had before, without having to buy a whole nother jar of it. You're already going to have that jar of off-white no matter what, and you're just going to have it. Why not be able to access that and utilize it? Yeah, check this out, boy. This is, yeah. I tell you, well, I know I'm kind of advocating a certain approach here with the metals, but this is a person who never really ever got to paint. I've told you the story many times, and this right here is just a very relaxing way to do metals. That way back 20 years ago, we tried doing them. Boy, it was a miserable experience even then because you didn't really know what you were gonna get from your metal colors. And here I just look at this. We're gonna take some more of this now as we move this along and lighten this up. We are gonna just ever so I don't want to get this to look like our golds, but we are gonna make that a touch lighter here. Now I think you'll see the change. Yeah, I think you can see the little bit of change there. I think of how I don't think how quickly you could be painting up entire armies with really interesting differences in your metals. Now see, in all of our shadow areas, that dark is starting to remain behind. And I don't have to worry about that being super metallic because, well, what's going down in there? That's our verdigris effect. That's going to be very anti-shine, very anti-metal. Just it's the nature of the verdigris effect. I mean, look at a little example of that faux bust over there. Now, this is just a blast. I really look at this. Yeah, check that out. Now, I will in some areas here. That wasn't so much about making it lighter. I was actually trying to take some of the yellow away. So look at that. I mean, this is really, and this we can go brighter than this. However, if we want that verdigris effect to show up reasonably well, I have to make sure not to get too bright here with any kind of, say, metal highlights. If I do, it's gonna fight with that verdigris a bit because the verdigris is a light effect. Look at it there. Check out on the the scapula, no, the clavicle over there on that bust. You can see how much lighter that verdigris effect is than the metal itself. Something to be aware of. That's, well, what do we always say? That weathering, well, everything is like a chess match, but weathering especially like a chess match. Gotta think ahead. We're trying to think ahead here. So let's just here, kind of, now that this is dried down a little bit, I can sort of feather some of these brush strokes. You can see the highlights start to emerge a little bit. Here, let's do some along the staff here. Let's get the face over here. Let's take some away. So that wasn't a dry brush. I mean, look how much paint's on here. Look how much paint is on there. But boy, are we having a blast. Well, I am. I know I am. Now, if you're wondering why this was one of the kind of ideas for the Geek Nation, that was for Adepticon. Well, last year, the Geek Nation class, that was all about using the metal medium. Everybody in the class got a jar of Vallejo metal medium to take with them, and we just basically played with that the entire 2 hours of the class, just doing crazy things with the metal medium, not necessarily just painting a miniature, but we thought that this particular figure and would really play off of that last year's lesson really well, because obviously folks are gonna, from year to year, it's kind of their annual thing. Look at that. So yeah, this and with each class that I do, and boy, it was definitely going to be a big part of Adepticon, is to make a painting video of the class. Now, last year it was extra fortuitous because I lost my voice before the class, so they still had the class in video form. But under normal circumstances, it's there to sort of answer your questions once the class is over and I'm not around anymore. And you can say, hey, what was that deal again with the other thing and the thing? All right, so with the copper, what you're looking to do is get a little bit more, like I said, towards the pink. Now what we're going to do here is we will let this all kind of settle and dry and such, and we will get back to it with a little bit more, maybe some more highlights, and then it will be ready for its verdigris. Ah, look at that. Take a little bit of, here, a quick little light on that edge. All right, now we're going to do what we just did here, but we're going to try that with gold, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're going to do some gold on this one now. Just like the other one had to dry a little bit, we may go back on this one and do some more highlight type areas on this while we wait for this to dry from our initial glazes there. So let's do something like that. Here, let's grab ourselves a little brush for that. Now, I'm going to go with our transparent brown. I might actually, now, you know what? Don't need more transparent brown. The heck with it. We're just going to go orange. Take transparent orange and the black together. Oh, I may have to throw some transparent purple out here too. Well, that'll wait for next time. What we are going to do though is boom. See, that's got much more warmth to it than the other one. As I said, just don't be afraid to just mix something. You need something, mix something. Ooh, that's t-shirt worthy or sticker worthy. I think so. Surely it must be sticker worthy. You know what? Where's that? Now this is something that couldn't really make because, well, we don't actually have much of a blue. We have a blue-ish color out there, but oh, look at that. Look at that. And we are just going to let that all mix in here. Look at that. This is, gosh, how many years ago was that? It was at ReaperCon. It was one of the last classes that I taught there. It was about the Reaper Clear and Liner paints. So look what just happened there. I kind of had the orange color there. Look at what just happened as it marched its way down here. See how it just sort of transforms itself? How fun is that? And that is going to make a really nifty backdrop to our gold medal. Oh, yeah. Really loving that. So in many ways, this is like going back to my Reaper Clear paints, and we're gonna use those again. Like I said, so many people kind of had a hard time getting those. I moved away from it, but look at that. Look at that nifty, bam. We don't usually get to do this because, well, typically a figure like this wouldn't be all just one. It's not all just one color like that. All right, so let's go back over here now. I also want to try some of. I'm curious now. I gotta see. Oh, look at that. Check out that metallic purple. That's tasty. I'll throw a little orange in there, see what happens. Wow, that's something I want to try on here, just for funsies. And oh, I like that. I do like that. Wow. Yeah, that is really fun. Now the first figure, boy, oh boy, this is a long time ago. It was a Facebook Live. I'm gonna grab this for you here. This is the first time I ever experimented with the metal medium. So you can see all the different blues and purples in there and the turquoise. So we basically made our own color shifts there. Well, ever since that time, I just sort of became really a fan of the mix in the metal medium with paint. Now look at that nifty See, we're even doing a little bit of reflected light here now, but it's a different color. It's a different color than the bronze around it. But oh yeah. Now everybody is comfortable in their own way of doing things, but for me, the most comfortable way of doing the metals by far is this. It makes sense, right? Because never really, I would just say, grew up with metallic paint. So I always just was making my own metal colors, just not with metallics. But at this point now, I can. I can make my own colors with metallics, have more control over it. More control, more better. Now, you know what? Let's gonna get some of that out here onto our like so. This as I'm waiting, I'm gonna keep an eye on that other figure there. I know we were talking about doing the gold on the other figure. Well, it's smaller than this. It's a bit simpler than this. But yeah, look at this. See, we're getting some of that purple and I can really see that now on camera. Maybe it doesn't show up quite so much. Might not show up as much, but I think it really does on the miniature make a big difference. Now, like anything else, just like weathering, too much of anything can be not so nifty. Now, I have to be careful here not to go berserk with it and put it just see, look at the, now you can really see it next to, let's put some of that next to your goal. You can see that very evidently right there. Now again, just doing that down here. Also, too, now when we start to add the verdigris effects, a lot of what we're doing here, especially in the darker areas, well, I mean, by default, it might sort of be, I don't want to say wiped away, but it's going to be covered up, right? Because we're using those verdigris things, and that's just going to collect in all these areas that are dark. It's another reason why I'm trying to just shift the color here. Rather than, you don't see me mixing a whole lot of the metal medium in there to lighten it. Like you've seen me do, well, I haven't done a whole bunch of TMM or metal things. There was actually an entire unit that I was going to do with the metals. That project sort of went by the wayside with the whole Song of Ice and Fire thing. I was actually going to do all of the Starks in a non-metallic or TMM type of effect. I thought they were perfect for it. I mean, who knows? Maybe I still do that, but there's other stuff that I've got too that I can do that with. Wow, this is really, that's interesting, the impact that has. I will touch more here. Just let a little bit of the yellow work its way in. Again, another slight little shift here as we work our way down. Careful as always not to get too bright with this so that my verdigris shows up. Now it's going to be total opposite with the other one with the gold. Complete opposite deal there. All right, so let's just set that one aside. We're almost there on this, but look at that. Look what's up here, where it's more the orange, and then as we put the purple in, look what that just did. That was two colors, and it was just a glaze. It was two colors and some water. That's all it was. Now look at this nifty. Now let's say, okay, we weren't going to do gold on this. That's not a bad little, what would you say, pre-painting right there. In some ways, it is very similar to what we would do with the, say, remember the Reaper clear paints, the liner paints? We just throw them over the top, take the sponge, wipe them away. It's kind of along the lines of what we did with those. Now I am, again, while I wait for the last of that to dry off, I'm going to see if I can maybe get some lighter colors on these. Like I said, especially in the crevices around like all of these amulets and such here and bracelets, boy, those that's where you're really going to have your verdigris collect. So that's why I'm just trying to find things like here and here, there. Do a little more. Again, I've got a lighter color there. I think now we're good on the gold. We'll do that now. Okay. All right. So what are we gonna do? We are gonna remember what we used on that sword handle there. Let's just start to play with this a bit. Curious to see how well this will cover now. And wow, I gotta tone it down. That covered way better than I was expecting. I was not anticipating that. That's just with the transparents. Can you imagine? Well, we did use one of the opaques. I don't know, with the bluish gray there. It's blue black, I think is the name of the color. So very nifty here. I mean, that's just see, we can, like I said, we can leave some of that dark just be down there in the crevices. I might, even at a certain point here, experiment with a bit of potentially a darker glaze. Say, taking something like the purple and the black, and basically making a metallic glaze. I don't even know if people have ever thought of doing something like that. But look at that. Look at what just happened there. I mean, if that's not an easy way to get a whole heaping bunch of color in your... Look at that. I mean, geez. Well, actually, I'm really not terribly surprised because that's what was supposed to happen. And I've got, like I said, I've got, was that the Stormcast Eternals? I've got some other 40k, what are they? There's some Custodies, and I've got Sisters of Silence. And the idea is to do, one in each. One in non-metallic and one in this, and then true metallic. But you can bet you're going to be seeing what you just saw here with this gold stuff, baby. You're going to be seeing that on those, I think they're Terminators, right? Yeah, basically Terminator sized. Because I'm having me a blast right here. And this almost, this feels like I'm doing oil painting. Look, I'm going to take some of my, look at that, some of my initial glaze is still wet there. I'm actually mixing that in. Look at how it's tinting my metals there. Now that is worth the price of admission right there. So what did we do so far? Basically, in effect, we took the same couple of colors that we started with that glaze. All we did was we added a little bit of metal medium to them. And now we're just going over the top of them again. I know there's rich gold and bright gold and shiny gold and green gold and orange gold and black gold and all this other kind of stuff, but I don't know. This to me, because I remember the days where I was trying to do, what would you, like mithril silver, you'd start out with tin bits, and then there'd be like a different gold that was supposed to be darker, and then another gold after that, then another gold after that, and you prayed that when you put the mithril silver over the top, it would still look gold, instead of sort of gold with shiny, worn out metal stuff on top of it. Not so here. No siree. Yeah, look at that. And oh my god, just agonizing over how the heck to make the metals darker. And this was something that was discussed in I think it was a live session. It's one of the value of the live sessions there is that people can actually ask. And the question that was asked was, okay, in your shadow areas, would your metals be that shiny anyways? And the answer, I mean, I thought about it for a second. I said, the answer's got to be no. There's no way in the shadow area your metal's going to be that shiny. So, okay, you got less metal medium mixed in there, right? So, because that's what makes your color darker. So by default, you're also keeping a little less of the metal medium. Look at this. I mean, that's just, it's like it's oil painting practically. Which now I'm all excited about trying those oils and the metallic oils then. I think one of the reasons that I'm just kind of waiting on that is because, well, getting your hands at anything right now is not going to be very easy. But just getting your hands on the metal medium at this point, or the metallic oil paints from Mig Ammo, the oil brushers, not the easiest. So here we just took the purple, right? It's got a little bit of our stuff in there. That's just there. Boom. Like so. Yeah, let's go a little. Look at that. So this is in some ways the same as what we put on the bronze figure or copper figure, whatever, that's going to have the verdigris effect. Now the reason we're going a little less gold down here, yes, darker, but also, I mean, it's closer to the base, so it should change that. Look at that. I mean, that is just in no time flat. I mean, we're talking like, what, 10 minutes? Not even. Not even. And we've got a host of different colors here. We got plenty of shading, and that's, like I said, we've barely even started here. I can go lighter. Here, let's go right there with it. I'm going to take a little bit more of that's the transparent yellow. Transparent yellow right there and there. So I think I think we're on to something here. I think we are on to something here. That is really, really, really fun. It's such a, maybe what would you say, just like the oils, the actual feel of it when you work with it, it might not be just something right off the bat that's natural for you. You might have to play with it a little bit. It was for me. This is certainly not the first time I've used this. I haven't used it hundreds of times. I haven't even used it dozens of times. But I've used it enough to sort of get a sense of what it can do, and you'll just have to do the same thing. You know what? Try something just easier like this. Something that has a whole bunch of folds, like that. Well, maybe just the Stormcast or something along this line, and just do this. And almost make it like a gold statue instead of trying to say, well, I must have just this one part of the Space Marine crest or something. No, just the heck with it. Just make an entirely gold Space Marine. Make it like a terrain statue or something. And we see it all the time that people will take just a regular Space Marine sculpt or Age of Sigmar sculpt, whatever, old Empire guy, something on a horse, right, and just turn it into a statue. Because most statues, yeah, they're larger than life size, but a lot of them are just life size. So look, we can still go lighter here. Look at how much lighter that can be. I am still going to get some of the yellow in there, though. Still going to let some of the yellow get into that. But boy, I love all the purple that's in my shadows here on this. I am digging that. And man, that's getting nice and bright. That is, so this is pretty much the first time I've ever really tried doing gold in this way. Wow, look how much brighter that is on my thumb there. Hadn't really tried. And I mean, of course, the first time you ever try anything, you have to film it in case something goes horribly wrong. And then everybody knows. But hopefully this just makes you a little less, just a little less hesitant to try new things. Because man, if a person who just never got the chance to try this before, 20 years of miniature painting really, can just mess around with this, I think you can too, and I think you can have some fun with it. I am going to try to start thinking about reflected light and other stuff. There's a couple of these little bits and pieces down in those crevices there. And yes, I could be using a smaller brush, but what the heck, I'm having fun with this brush right now. It's just one of the old beat up craft brushes, nothing fancy. But I want to preserve, there's a nice little, there's that touch of that purple metallic right in there that we used. And I don't want to lose that, but we're gonna pop in some lighter colors there. And this, to me, I'm almost forgotten that I'm using metallic paints. Now that's another little, because I've said this to people when they're trying to get used to the oil paints, and they'll say, "Wow, man, how long is it gonna take me to get used to them?" I said, "You will know when you're used to them, when you work with them and you forget that you're just using oil paints. When your brain does not say, "Oh, I'm using oil paints. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this." Just like at this point here, I'm practically forgetting that these are metallic paints, and now I'm just doing what I would normally do if none of this was metal. This isn't my regular paints. I'm doing the same thing. You can see now I'm starting to do with my highlights, right? My chain of highlights to come down. Check that out. Yeah, that is pretty sweet there. And as I spin this around, there is some really nifty stuff going on here. Now let's go back a little bit. Let's retreat here. Let's retreat to something that's a little bit darker. This is almost basically a metallic glaze that I'm doing here. It's a darker, but it's got some of the metal medium in it, so it's not going to kill any of my metallic effect. It's just gonna give that shadowy a little bit more of a metallic effect. It was mostly just glaze right there. There was virtually no metal paint there, and that's not what we want. We want some metal, like over here, under there. Yeah, I really am enjoying what's happening here. Like here in the cheeks, okay, that's mostly just, there is no metal paint in there. Now there is, but we haven't made it any lighter. That's the key. Without changing its brightness, we're doing the same thing there. So I just changed the color of it and gave it a bit more of a metal look. Very excited about this. Now let's do some, see if we can't. This is something we would do if this was metallic or non-metallic paint. So we're trying to basically reflect that gold onto this sword, and I think we were just able to do that. See that right there? So this casting a reflection there. Now I'm going to go a bit even lighter here with this. So yeah, what we'll do next then is we'll do some, oh, what will we call it? Some final prep for our verdigris effect on our bronze / copper statue. We'll set that up next. For right now, I'm just gonna, in the waning moments of this segment here, we'll put a bit more in the way of lights there. I talk about the glittering horde. Boy, you know what? Boy, I've got... I got to get my hands on some more Easterlings. And maybe try this on... well, Lord of the Rings figures, they're a little bit... They don't necessarily have the... You know what? I got some elves that are coming, and I'll do metallic on the elves. It's a commission thing, and actually, the person I'd be doing it for would actually sort of be happy if I did do metallics on it. So maybe we'll do that. That's not all that far away actually. Here we're just gonna get a bit of a highlight on the end of that. Now we're gonna just very quickly, we're gonna take that. We are gonna take some of the purple. We're gonna take some of our black. Touch of that brown, more black. The idea is to make a darker. If I hold it that way, you can see, that's what I'm looking for. There we go. This is the thing that's really hard to do when you're just using, say, regular. That's the regular metallics there. It's just look at it. I can make my own darker metallic coat for right in there. Just bam. See the difference between the two there? Alright, so I think we're pretty well along here. What we are going to do then, like I said, it won't be the longest segment in the world. We're just going to move on, make sure we got everything set up for our final verdigris effect there. Man, look at this down in the shadows there. Really fun stuff. And that's what we're going to do in the other one. We're going to work in some in the shadows and get some highlights on that. We'll do that next. So I add a little bit of this to act, believe it or not, as sort of an off-white here. Now, I also want to do a little bit of work on the basis, and I'm going to move my water out of the way and just use this spot over here. So we'll combine these two and get a few more lights on Mr. Skull over here. Nothing too crazy. I threw a little bit more of the transparent brown out there too. Remember with the skulls, try not to get too crazy making those bleached, because unless they're out in the desert, really, bleached skull, not quite what you're going to have. And now let's do some lighter things here on the base, and we're just going to, you're going to get a little bit of a marble tutorial out of this here, a little quick thing. Yeah, nothing fancy. All I'm doing is just some wavy lines, pretty much. Now you can see that I pushed the brush around and made almost like a little bit of a cracked effect there, and then we just carry that down. See, we vary the widths of these lines here. Let's change the color and value of that. It's a little bit darker now. Maybe even here, a little bit of that blue-gray work its way in there. Now, I realize the figure blocks some of this, and it'll be tough for you to see, but check that out. Check that out. Here's a little more. There. So again, a quick little no fuss marble. We'll do the same thing over here. And I got a whole bunch of colors sitting in that brush. What am I going to do? I'm going to press it down. I'm just going to pull it off to the side like that. Look at this. I'm going to take this, smush it down, pull it off to the side. Grab some of our, again, like some of the gray, some of the blue, and while that is still wet, I can even blend that a little bit. Now my gold metallic maybe shows up a little bit more, because it's not just the fact that this is not shiny and that is shiny, it's the fact that this is also now more of a bluish gray, and the gold is a warm, shiny, intense. So even with metallic colors, you can still affect things like how intense or saturated the color is. Even with metallics, you can still do that. Remember what the purple did? And some of the shadowers, same thing, same idea. Oh, let's hit the Mr. Skull over here too. Yeah, these are the GW skulls. Oh, I'm gonna go back into my black over there. That almost makes it more of a pinkish color, believe it or not. And we'll just let that wet blend for a bit there. So like I said, we're doing a few odds and ends. Maybe I'll throw some grass on here or whatever after the fact. Just grab a couple of tufts or whatever, throw them on there. Could do some leaves. That is, again, that's not super important at this stage. But what we are going to do now, let's maybe grab a brush that's on the smaller side here. See what we can do with some transparent brown mix. Well, let's just go transparent brown and the metal medium. See what we get, and I'm thinking be pretty similar to what's in our picture. Yeah, so literally the transparent brown mixed with metal medium, depending on your mix, how much of the metal medium you do or don't use, well, you get yourself a pretty darn nice copper color, just by default. No struggle. No trying to find just the right copper color. You just make it. I know I really, yes, it's neat to have the turbo dorks and all those different colors. That's great too. But when it comes down to it, you say, well, would you rather just make all your own versions of those? Now the color shift stuff, well, that's a little different. You know, the pearlescent stuff, that's different. I can't really make a pearlescent paint out of what I've got here. That I can't do. All right, so I treat myself to a jar of that. The focus on the color shift paints. Now I do that. There's some of the green stuff roll metallics that I really did like, and maybe I can't necessarily get quite the same color out of this method. Well, then okay, I'll just get those. I'll get myself some jars of those couple of jars that I really, really like, and that's it. I'm good. Because, well, especially with the way things are going to be now, would you really want to be spending tons of extra dollars on a bunch of paints? Or you say, you know what, look, I really could use this, and you just focus on that. I know there's what is that? The desire to collect that thing of confidence of quantity. I mean, I've got all of these different colors, man. I am set. I can conquer the world because I have all these different colors. Now, what ends up happening usually is those colors conquer the people because there's just too many of them, and there's more of them than there are of you, and you lose control of your subjects, and they overthrow you and destroy your kingdom. So to keep your subjects in place, control your paint population. Now, I'm really tempted to... what the heck? Let's do something like this. We're going to throw a little bit of the pale green in there. I'm just going to have a little fun with something right here. It's almost a generic kind of a silver color in a way. It's got a little bit of tint to it. There we go. For some of these, Again, some of the amulets here. I might even let a little bit of this yellow here, almost like what we're using for our golds there in the other figure. How about we let a little bit of that work its way in? And let's see if I can't on the ends of the flame there. Now we got to go darker. I'm just looking at that going, nope, got to go darker. So we're mixing ourselves a dark metallic out of this. A little of the black with the purple. Let's see what we get. Let's see what we get. If I spin it that way, I think you can see it better. And poof! Now I got some dark there. Just didn't have any. Needed some. Just made some. We are going to throw that in some of our shadow areas here. Again, not going to go too crazy about that because we will have our verdigris effect go in there next. Now I'm seeing a little. See here, not just the fact that it's got to be maybe a bit darker, but actually needed a little bit more of a metallic effect there. So this is where we start to say, all right, yeah, it's a little dull here. There's a lot of the original glaze sitting in there, so maybe I will go in there with something else and lighten that up. Speaking of lightening, so basically the metal medium itself, that's what becomes your lightest light. I've tried to mix white with it to make it even lighter. That really doesn't work. It dulls it down too much, and it's kind of visible. It's one thing when you got, say, middle tones or whatever, you don't really notice it, but you really notice it a lot when you try and do that with your highlights. For whatever reason, you mix in the darker paints or even that purple that we've been mixing, it would not show as much as, let's say, we took that pale green and mixed it in with our metals here. So there's something there, a physics thing, a chemical thing, whatever it is that makes that happen. Again, finding myself a few lights here. Again, using the smaller brush here just to pick some things up. Realizing all this time that I've got to make sure not to go too crazy with this because I know I've mentioned it 1,000 times about that verdigris effect. I have to leave space for that. Now that sort, I might even tarnish that some more, but I wanted it to have a bit of a tarnished look, and looks like we were pretty successful with that. Yeah, just trying to a couple of lights right here along that center line. Now let's brighten up a couple of these. As I look at this, I can still see some of my purples in there. I can see some of more of my golds and such. Here, let's go back in with something that's got a bit more of, that's the transparent brown mixed with the metal medium. And just a few of these areas here. Now, as you see by the statue over there, we've got the streaking on that. I guess we'll try and do that in this too. I mean, it's you got the very active pose here, but yet you got the streaking. Now, this is something that people will do this on shields, right, or whatever. Guys stand there with a shield, and it's got all these rushed streaks and everything, which looks really nifty. But then it also makes you wonder, well, I mean, was this like the Tin Man? It rained and then he rusted in place and he never moved? and just stood there in the rain for days, yeah, your shield could still potentially get dinged up and rusty, but is it really just sitting there laying on the ground that long to have a rust streak form? So, like I said, weathering, it's tricky because all of a sudden you can get to a point where it's like, so where'd all that extra weathering come from? How'd that get there? Yes, these are all just fantastical little tiny creatures and toys, but sometimes having that little touch of realism, there's just something about that. There's about a couple more highlights in there. There we go. Lots of fun stuff. I'm just going to look at that, and yeah, we've got some of those reddish type colors in it, but we got some variety. You know what? What the heck? We're going to go crazy here. We're actually going to put some red into this. I just want to see what happens. I don't know if I've ever actually really mixed the metal medium with anything that's red. I just want to see what happens. It's not like you're going to see a bunch of it. I already do like it, though. I do like that, so I'm going to have to find a way to... We haven't really done much with, say, a metallic sort of red color, so maybe that is something we need to do on one of those Stormcast there. And are there reddish metal colors? Of course there are. The Turbo Dork had them. Green Stuff World has them because we used them. But I had some fun with this. And again, Green Stuff World, I believe is the Arctic White. If you use that, I think that's what it was. That is the equivalent of a metal medium. So if you got their metallic set, I guess it is. I don't really buy sets of paint, but that should probably be in there, I'm thinking. Whoops. There. Yeah, just throwing a few hints of this red in a couple places. Why not? It's just like when we throw in, say, the purple and such next to the turquoise on our metals, and people go, wait a minute. There shouldn't be purple on that sword, but it just registers as gray. All of these different colors. From a distance, they're just going to register essentially as basically a bronze type color, even though we've got a lot more variety than just a simple bronze color there. Alright, so that I'm going to call that good enough for now because, like I said, I can always add some more of these type of highlights and such. But at this point now, I've got to see what that verdigris is going to do. I have to see how light it's going to be. We haven't used it yet. I haven't even opened those containers. So we are about to discover what that verdigris stuff can do. And we'll play with that on this figure next. So here's our moment of truth as we try out some of these liquid pigments here. Now we got the verdigris. That's over here. It's actually kind of changed colors a bit. So you can see that this stuff, you really have to mix it well. There's an agitator inside there. We've got the blue over here, the turquoise oxide. This is actually the white dust, so we can lighten this. Here's the light and dark green. I don't know if I stirred the heck out of them, but they still sort of look kind of the same. I'm not quite sure we'll be diving into those, but what I'm going to do is take a little bit of that blue there, mix those together, and well, let's see what happens. I'll start with maybe a more obvious place where you would put something like a verdigris. And that's going to be in here. This is the whole reason why this stuff is so thin is it's obviously meant to be a wash. Now I don't know if I have to water this down to get it to. All right, so I think you can see that. And we're obviously going to focus this on the recesses. Now, what I'm wondering is, do I use my... Yeah, see, what could be interesting is if this has, well, sort of Statue of Liberty-esque, just have an awful lot of the verdigris up there. And it sort of makes sense. This would be catching a lot of the weathering potentially, so... And you can see we're trying to balance the sparkle of the metals against this, which this is supposed to be ultra flat. Now you could use, say, weathering powders with this. There's definitely verdigris colored weathering powders, or we could just make those, and that would also give you that same sort of texture. So I am gonna have an even more watered down version over here. Let's see what happens with that. Let's go back to this over here. So it really does, with this, you want to start out slow with it. You don't want to go crazy with this, because when it's on there, it's kind of on there. And now you've got some work ahead of you to try and undo what you did. Now it is also, in theory, you put this in some places that are higher, not necessarily only in crevices. So there may be times where I'm just a little bit more quiet because I'm just trying to assess what this does. Now it really does seem to be very, very, very matte. I mean, that's good. That's what we want. See, like right here, it's not necessarily what would you say, a recessed surface there, but I think it still is helpful. Yeah, let's keep going with this here. Like I said, right now, this is just 100% experiment because I have not tried this stuff yet. I could have just taken some of the ProAcryls and say like that pale green that you've seen me use a lot. I could just use that too. But see where I've got these cracks here and the eyes of the skull around that. Surely, I think that's got to be an area to think about for stuff like verdigris. See that right there? Now I realize that the lights are gonna really go nuts on this. There's pretty much nothing you can do. Kathy was trying to... She's been working on metallic videos also, and it's driving her crazy. She just can't show what she'd really like to show as far as what she's doing. So I'm going to see here. I'm just going to plop that on there and then remove with my finger, see what happens. All right, remember all of the darks that we were trying to build up. That this is... Now you see why. Because the more dark you've got in those recessed areas, the more this shows up. And like I said, it doesn't have to be absolutely 100% everywhere. Now, like on the statue there, it's in a fair number of places, but if you cover up all the metal, then I mean it'll still be a verdigris effect, but especially something small like this. If it's only just green, then what was the point of doing all the stuff with the metals, I guess? So it is something that you will have to assess on your own. I am maybe gonna change the color of that green. So here now it's a little bit warmer. It's a little bit less bluish. I don't know if that makes it any more translucent or not. I'm just gonna go back and forth between the two of those, and we'll certainly focus down here. If I could turn on my main light, you probably wouldn't have as much issue with the reflection, but with something like this, I got to be able to see it. If I can't see this, that's not going to be good. So I can see if I go in with a second layer, it does, even just a second layer of that. So it tells me there is some translucency there. I'm going to throw a little more blue into that. And the areas where you've got the cracks, it's not a bad place for the verdigris, that's for sure. Just over here, I'm going to have my little sort of well of more thinned down version of this. And I'm just going to grab me a different brush right here. I need to be able to sneak around through some of these, like the weapons and stuff with all these arms. I need something that can get in there a little bit easier. And I've got to be aware of not killing all of my darker color there. And the temptation is certainly to overdo. I'll do, again, I'm going to put this out here. Maybe you can see when we're trying to grab some water to thin that down. And I think, too, another wise thing might be just to maybe approach it in a few layers. So water it down, maybe do a couple of passes with it instead of just one straight up pass. Now, the whole goal of this was to not have to go back in and darken down the metals. The other thing I wanted to see is what kind of a hard edge do we get with this? And that's the area where I may have to go back in and fool around with some of the metals again, because it seems to want to be a kind of a bit of a hard edge there. I think I'll go right down here a bit. So you can see that this is probably the best view for you here. The shapes are a little bit bigger, a little less complex, and you can see more of what's going on. So let's really focus back here. And this is my more thinned down version over there. And I can see right away it gets down more into these crevices than it does when it's just straight out of the jar. So, and you can see there's a little bit of capillary action now. Before, there wasn't that much. So I would say, at least with this one here, doing a little bit of thinning down on it first, probably a good idea. I suppose the other interesting thing about with the verdigris stuff here, there's something you really don't like what happened with the metals. Well, then you put more verdigris there. Like there, I couldn't get at that with the metal color anyway, so I'm just gonna let more verdigris go there, and well, it's all fine. Like I said, this whole statue thing here could be totally green or completely verdigris. And that would be just fine, no big deal. So I'm definitely seeing, yeah. Now I'll be curious, there will be a few parts there's a couple of parts where I'm going to want to go lighter with this. Basically taking the white there and mix it in with the verdigris. I was thinking of just using I've got the opaque pale green ProAcryl. And I thought, wow, yeah, I'll use that in there because, well, that's opaque. Well, as I see how this is reacting and how it dries and stuff, I don't need that opacity. really don't need that kind of opacity. So I think if I was to add the white dust to it, that's probably going to really lighten up. So yeah, just thinning it a little bit does let it flow a little easier. Now the advantage, let's say we took the weathering powder approach, the advantage there is that until it's fixed with the fixative, you can just wipe it right off. You could just take some more rubbing alcohol and literally just wipe it all away, or some of it. But here, I'll use my hands. So I'll just take away the excess. My finger there. I could use the sponge too, I suppose. What do we got over here? I'm thinking we'll just really get a healthy amount of our verdigris in on that thing. And let's do some on this blade here. And when I'm thinking, okay, I'm just thinking gravity here. That's another reason why I didn't really do a whole bunch in this area. So it just all sort of sinks down into that end. Bit more over here. So I think we're doing okay. Like I said, I like to do these live tests of things for the first time, because there is, when you do something a million times and then you go to show somebody, there's just a certain level of kind of, well, either laissez-faire or, well, how could you not possibly know this? And then it sort of translates through the video, and other people, having not done this a bazillion times, not going to be so familiar with it. And that would be me with anything that is tech. If I've used it a couple of times and I know it, I can extrapolate and be fine. But if it's something that is brand new to me and I have not done it a bunch of times and not had that repetition and been in different situations, well, it slows me down dramatically. So see what that, yeah, that was that flowed a whole lot easier having that bit of water in it. Don't do it too much. You don't want to do it too much. And yes, this is acrylic, so now that is the other, well, in a day and age now where you can't really get rubbing alcohol anywhere, this might be more helpful, because, well, yeah, rubbing alcohol, not so much. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of videos for me that involve rubbing alcohol. And that would be mixing it with, say, things like the weathering powders. So here, now again, another area where I consider a bit more here. A little second round. And there's nothing that says I can't go back into this and, like I said, with the metals or whatever, and go back over the top. But hopefully I'm just trying to time all this stuff right and not have to go back again and do that. Now here, gotta do something. So let's take our water down. A little of that other green in there. I know it's gonna be tough for you to see what I'm doing there. Just, it's not like there's anything really interesting. You can't see much in the way of shading there, so why not put a little verdigris effect there? Let's see what happens if we let that sort of do its own little watercolor thing and just sort of wet blend itself. Some more here. I'm going to put a little bit of that blue in there. It's almost tempted to put some of that some of the industrial dust. I think that's what that is. And this maybe even either darken it, tone it down. Until I see this outside of the lights of the video, I really won't know exactly what to make of it. Here, we're gonna get some of that in here. Just again, thinking about where collection points where the water might tend to want to gather. And I'm pretty sure at this point, yeah, see, that does make a difference. Now, what the heck? Let's just try it now. We're gonna add a little bit and a little more. Just adding a little bit of white to it, and I'm gonna try a different brush here with something even more fine. So okay, yeah, that does lighten it. It does make a difference. I can see it more now. Yeah, you can really see it there. But like always with this, you're gonna add the lighter stuff here. Well, really give it a thought about what you're doing with that. See here, I'm gonna use it intentionally to get maybe a little bit of difference in the sword there. Now streaks and stuff. I don't know if I can. There's just so many things going on here. It's gonna be the streaks. I don't think they're gonna translate very well. So I'm not really gonna do. I mean, you got the streaks on that big old bust right there, but that thing is huge. This thing is not, and that does not have 6 arms. This one does. So I'm thinking more. Yeah, we won't necessarily go too much with the streaks on this. I was hoping to, but there is a lot of information here that's happening. And I can really see the difference adding that little bit of the white dust made. I'll be curious to see if that makes a good winter whitewash or not. And there's winter vehicles to be done, so we'll certainly have a chance to try that. This hasn't had a chance to get any of the verdigris yet, so we'll just pop some there. So it's relatively translucent, but it has an effect, that's for sure. I mean, no doubt about it. I'm going to do a bit more of the brighter verdigris there. And you can see how bright it gets on some parts of that little statue thing. And again, I realize it's not exactly a historical statue sitting outside or whatever. But it really was the best thing I could find. Everything else had just too much of the verdigris effect. I did not want to have this absolutely buried in verdigris. Bit more of the green there. This is back to that lighter mix once more. I'm trying also, I gotta think of center of interest for this. I don't want to do really bright green, say, on that head right there, because, well, we don't want to be calling attention to that. Let's see, how much more of this do we want to do? I think at this point, I don't know if I want to be adding a whole lot more. I think at this point, I'm just going to try and find these places where I actually use this lighter version of it, where I'm taking the white and the verdigris. Let's do a couple lines of that along here. No, I think I will. I want to preserve some of the, at least as much as I can, of the verdigris on, or the original bronze on the flame there. So I don't think I'll go. I was gonna do some more on that, and I thought, no, no, let's not do that. And also, it's a little bit hard to tell if the texture difference in this is more to do with it being next to the metals, or is it really that ultra matte, almost like a dust that you would want to see. I think it is. I do think it's sort of ultra matte. It was, we couldn't really tell on the terrain. It was, I mean, there was all the lines and such on that terrain, so it was a little hard to tell. I'm going to turn on actually another light here and see if that actually helps. Again, going lighter right there. And it does, yeah, see, now that is interesting. Okay, by adding the white in there, actually using a little bit of a smaller brush, I can sort of control the edge of it. It's getting a little bit less of a hard edge, so that's okay. Yeah, because just by itself, what was starting to happen is that I was getting lots of just the watermark edges on it. Now, if you did that with some kind of oils, which we could do at another point too, weathering with oils would just take, oh, I would say something along the lines of a phthalo green, mix it with some kind of a, oh, maybe either a yellow ochre, maybe a raw sienna, a little bit of a off-white in there, something along those lines, maybe even something to give it a touch of bluishness. Phthalo green does have some blue in it. And then you would just obviously let that seep down in the cracks, and you could wipe away the extra, and you would not get any watermarks whatsoever. It just, that's, oils just don't do that. So maybe we give that a shot too, using some oil paints to do some kind of verdigris effect. Sort of after the fact. Now here, this is where I'm gonna, this is as light as I really ever want to go. Now I know you can't necessarily, oh, maybe if I go like that, you can see it a bit. It's about a touch more up here. Some there. So like I said, there's a lot going on with this. But I hope that this at least, I don't know, it could show you some ideas. If anything else, I try to experiment as much as I can. I don't know if I've really even, I think there was a couple of statue things that I tried doing for an army, oh gosh, probably almost 6-7 years ago now. Actually longer than, man, maybe 7 or 8. That was the last time I really tried to do any kind of super serious verdigris effect on something that was actually metallics. So for those of you maybe that never tried something like this, well, I encourage you to give it a shot and see what happens. I mean, it wasn't like we spent a super long time on just the metal parts. Because remember, we're working on pair of figures here. And if I need to, I can always go back with the metals again. Again, thanks for all the support here. It's, well, at this time, it's really necessary. And I know that the whole video schedule has gotten really kind of fouled up with everything that's been going on. And in the next week or so here, I'm going to try and go back to the things that I was hoping to do. Essentially, the stuff that was going to get sidelined by Adepticon. So we'll try and go back into all that. I just want to say thanks again for all the support, guys. Yeah, I mean, you drop a like on this video. That always actually helps, believe it or not, even though you're the only ones that can see it. It does make a difference. It actually does. Especially the army painting. And I know there was a few folks that really this month they've extended their pledges and really stepped up, and that's made a huge difference because, like I said, Adepticon, that was a massive loss for us, well, for everybody involved with it. But yeah, so hopefully, again, this gives you some ideas for some possible future things. And like I said, we are going to do a whole bunch more with the medals on Darksword figures and some other stuff. So yeah, let's bring our gold one up here. Now you can sort of, yeah, that really displays some of the differences there between the two. So thanks again, everybody, and I'll catch you on the next video.